frame impact. You have to lead in the community by identifying priority issues, then come up with an action plan, and then determine United Way's role in executing that plan. This part isn't that complicated as it seems. You just have to bring together a diverse cross-section of your community, talk about it. It's not going to happen in one meeting or one survey, but you'll probably find out pretty quickly that most people in your community are concerned about the same things. They just need to get out of their sandbox occasionally. At the United Way of Metropolitan Tarrant County in Fort Worth, the work began by grouping their existing portfolio of program investments into 5 broad areas. Then they hosted a community retreat with volunteers, agencies, and community leaders. 5 impact councils were challenged to identify key issues and figure out the best way for United Way and the community to target. Viney Chandler, the CEO in Fort Worth, will tell you that this process helped her realign her entire organization around outcomes, which leads me to the next attribute, focusing all efforts and resources on executing your community impact plan. It's tough to move money and resources, but we've got to do it. The attribute really moves us to now implementation, and it focuses on 2 things. First, how do you align your own organization internally? And second, how do you manage your work to create real results? All elements of your business have to align. The people, the processes, the talent, technology, the physical plant, everything. That means that the HR department better be asking, how do we get the people we really need in order to deliver on this mission? And the IT folks need to be asking, what do I need to do to ensure that technology is contributing to this mission? At the Mile High United Way in Denver, everybody on Mike Durkin's staff was asked to write an answer and create their own elevator speech. They had to complete this sentence. I help improve lives in Denver by doing this. Everybody. Their answers tie their own jobs to their mission. The receptionist, Joy Butler, even carries the title Director of First Impressions. It's a way of underscoring, and we called to make sure, it's a way of underscoring the vital role she plays in building strong external relations that can support this mission around community impact and results. The next attribute is the one that we all know and love. It's an area in which the movement has traditionally excelled, but we could certainly afford to do better. I'm talking about mobilizing resources in our community, and I'm telling you, it goes way beyond the annual campaign. The difference between now and our recent history is that Community Impact United Ways have to gather human, financial, informational, technological resources on an ongoing basis. And I'll repeat the important parts from my perspective on this. Different kinds of resources on an ongoing basis. Your resource development work has to be diverse, consistent, and aligned with the agenda. If your agenda is working over in community impact and your campaign cabinet's talking about something else, you're not aligned. Now, before I go any further, I want to make this point. Moving to community impact does not mean that we're turning our back on fundraising. As I've said before, fundraising is a critical community impact strategy, not the core business. But we need to diversify the way we think about development. We need to think beyond the annual campaign, and as a matter of fact, I don't think we can afford not to. We have to start searching for more opportunities to add value and stop acting like a monopoly. We're not a monopoly anymore. We're a competitor in search of value. That's the only way, it's the only way that we'll see the kind of growth that we really want and need. Ultimately, impact does raise more money. Economists expect that $41 trillion will be transferred through estates during the next 50 years. Of that, the estimate is that $6 trillion will probably go to charity. If we were able to apply our current market share of philanthropy, even though it's down, through the wealth transfer, that would represent an additional $2 billion in bequest income every year. And a lot of you may not have taken the step or the leap to diversify because you're so comfortable, and quite honestly, it takes so much effort to renew the annual campaign. But before Dan Dunn and the United Way in Birmingham, Alabama really began to diversify their revenue streams, that organization was pretty comfortable as well. Successful by all metrics and the standards of the day. Good campaigns, great agencies, happy volunteers. But Dan's team saw there were critical needs that were not being met. And they knew that they didn't have the resources coming in to do anything about it. So the leadership decided to step out of the comfort zone and do something. Today, they're managing a $5 million Welfare to Work grant, a $19 million Department of Labor grant, and a $1.9 million Ryan White Consortium grant. Also want to point out that that money wouldn't even be in the state of Alabama if United Way had not stepped in as the collaborator. This money is contingent on partnerships. In addition to those grants, Birmingham is doing an incredible job with planned giving. They have a $10 million endowment and an $18.2 million in expectancies. The bottom line is that Birmingham has a resource development strategy that's aligned with its community agenda. Their traditional campaign, the annual campaign, raises $31 million, a great annual campaign, but they're leveraging more than $70 million to improve people's lives in their community. Birmingham, Alabama is a great United Way. Another attribute, United Way has the ability to identify and seize opportunities to advance your community agenda, and you have to act quickly when opportunities arise. Opportunities come and they go. And if you're going to take advantage of opportunities that come our way, we have to be flexible and willing to move quickly. It's a different risk model for us. It's not the one we're accustomed to. It forces us to re-examine our decision-making processes. I mentioned the United Way in Burlington's success with cutting dropout rates. That was a great example in my mind of flexibility and quick action. Gretchen Morris, the executive director of that United Way, is part of an informal leadership group that gets together quarterly in her community. It's the mayor, it's the state secretary of human services, it's the superintendent of schools, and it's Gretchen. At one of their meetings, the secretary announced 3 of the school districts in their county had dropout rates that were among the highest in the state. As a result of their discussion, the 4 community leaders created a new partnership to address the problem. They quickly figured out, like a lot of us, that high absenteeism was a predictor of high school dropout rates. So they hired 2 social workers, each of whom worked with 10 students who had truancy problems. Every student who was truant had their reasons: domestic violence, substance abuse, mental health issues. Gretchen and her team concluded that creating a new program wasn't going to be the answer. What they needed to do was to coordinate the myriad of systems already involved in students' lives to get them to work more effectively together. As a result of their work, United Way support, the schools adopted tough new attendance policies, and as a last resort, students would be referred to the state's attorney for truancy action. The courts agreed to set aside 1 day a month to hear just truancy cases. Today, 3.5 years later, the dropout rate has been cut in half in Burlington. But it all started because the United Way had the vision to be at the table with the right group of community leaders, many of them who they didn't see traditionally as one of their partners. By now, you're probably thinking, I know I've thought of it, man, it was easier in the old mission. And I've heard it a few times on the road and here in this conference. It doesn't come across just this way, but can we go back? Can we go back? You know, we know that those days, if not already gone, are rapidly on their way out. But the donor is still the customer. The better we know and relate to our customers, the more successful we'll be at meeting their expectations. And that's the next attribute. Create an ideal donor experience. The greatest source of growth over the last 10 years for the United Way system has been high-end individual gifts. Since 1992, total giving in United Way has gone up 25%. In that same period of time, major gifts have increased 419%. Today, there are more than 20,000 members of the Alexis de Tocqueville Society nationwide. With this trend in mind, we've defined our target audience, specifically within our donor community, as the active community investor. These are people who care about their community, who are actively engaged already in trying to improve it, and who are giving at least $500 a year to a single community organization, United Way or not. People in this category right now who give to United Way make up 5% of our donors, but contribute 28% of the money we raise. There's so much room for growth. And today, there are 35 million people in our country who meet that profile of the active community investor, and today, 800,000 are giving to United Way. These are people who want to matter, who want to make a difference, and yes, they're willing to give their money, but they also want to be actively engaged. Ideally, they'll see United Way as a catalyst and a facilitator in that engagement. To meet that